was wondering, I've been on this sort of like 80s thing this week, and I was thinking about what kind of modeler would I recommend to someone who is either super into this 80s thing, in a tribute band playing some of this kind of classic rock, classic pop stuff, someone who needs kind of TC Electronic 2290 style stuff, Lexicon style back reverbs, big chorus tones, and also Marshall amps, right? Like, I think a big part of what made this era kind of sound the way it did was kind of these Marshall amps, or hot-rodded Marshall amps. You know, you've got your Gary Moores, you've got your Richie Samboras, I don't know. Probably leave comments below about all of the kind of famous 80s guys who used Marshall amps. I think Marshall was what I can... a wall of Marshalls, all of that sort of stuff. It was very much, Marshall was everywhere. Why am I saying Marshall so much? Anyway, so I think the answer for me is Fractal, because, and I'm going to go into this on the actual unit, there are so many Marshall amps in the Fractal world, way more than you find in any of the other kind of devices, unless you go to a Kemper, in which case I guess you've got to pay for each set of profiles that you want there. But you know, you've got everything from JTM 45s to Silver Jubilees, which aren't on any kind of other modelers as far as I can remember. Marshall JMP racks in there, you've got a Joe Satriani signature Marshall in there, you've got all kinds of stuff, as well as kind of your boutique takes on Marshall stuff, so whether that's from yesteryear Splawn, who were one of the premier kind of Marshall style boutique builders, you've got Friedman in there, obviously you've got Cameron, you've got all of these kind of great Marshall tones, and I think if you're one of these guys that's into this stuff, then the Marshall flavour, I think, is so much part of this 80s and this rock genre that it doesn't really, I think, make much sense to go anywhere else but Fractal, and I'll just show you, I think, why on the unit. Let me know in the comments if you think there's another device which kind of gets close to this. As far as I'm aware, there's really nothing that can do the variety of Marshall tones that Fractal can do, and do it really well. You know, in the Helix, which I'm a huge fan of, the Marshall amps are comparatively limited, as well as being sort of weird transitional models. Some of them don't have bright caps and this sort of thing. They're based on real world amps, but the real world amps aren't necessarily the kind of go-to plexi or whatever. So let's dive in. Let me know your thoughts. So I was messing around today, and here's a preset that I've just kind of put together. We've got a Silver Jubilee on scene 1, we've got the Brit 800 mod on scene 2, we've got the JTM 45 on scene 3, and we've got a Friedman HBE, but the BE channel on scene 4. So just going through these quickly. Got that kind of thing, then JTM. Then the 800 mod. And then Silver Jubilee. So let's just dig into this a second. All I've got going on in this preset is, I've got the input, I've got 3 blocks here where you could potentially put stuff if you wanted to, and then I've got the amp block, the cab block. All of this is using the same cab, the 103 Legacy, which I tend to use a lot. By the way, the Axe Effects, I think, has just had an update which makes this quicker. This is maybe the one downside of the FM3 if you listen. Get that gap between channel changes, which is something you'd have to work around live. I'm not sure, you know, if you're playing in a band, that probably isn't going to be hugely noticeable, but something to be aware of. Certainly if you were recording in the studio, that sort of thing would be quite irritating. Then I've got this chorus, which is the 80s style, handily. So there's 2 things really, I think, where the Fractal might be something worth looking at for this kind of thing. The chorus blocks and the multi-taps, that's 3 things actually in it, and also the amount of choice for Marshall amps. So I've just chosen the 80s style, and then I took this high cut up to 20,000. That's all I've had to do there to get that kind of sound, and it's spreading nicely across the stereo field. So, and then I've got this block here, which is actually the multi-tap delay. And if you look at the presets, all I'm doing is using LCRC, so this should go left center, right center. Kind of a circular delay. And then on scene 2, I think I was using as my lead channel, I got that same delay, but I took the mix down to 9%. Very straightforward stuff. Then into a room reverb, which is just default settings, and then out. So super simple, and you know, sounds, in my opinion, pretty decent. So if we go scene 1, I'm using the Brit Silver. So if we look here, you'll see you've got these kind of choices for Marshall style amps. You've got an 800, an 834. That's an Alessandro mod, I think. Or is it Alejandro? I don't know. I don't speak whatever language that is, Spanish. Then there's the Brit 800 mod, which is what I'm using later on. The Brit AFS 101, Brit AFS 102, the Brit Brown, the JM45, JM45 jumped, and then the JVM OD. We got all of the channels from that. Actually, not all of the channels. We got the Overdrive 1 and Overdrive 2 channels from that, but that's a more modern Marshall. Then we got the Brit Pre, which I'm going to guess is the Marshall preamp. You know, the rack version, the Silver, which I think is the Silver Jubilee, and then the Brit Super. Beyond this, we've also got these Cameron amps, which are very much Marshall based. So if you just listen. I mean, there's so much delay and reverb on that anyway, but then what else have we got? The Dirty Shirley, so that's a Friedman, that's Marshall based. Dirty Shirley 2, Friedman, Brown Eye, and the HBE, those are Marshall based. Here we are, JM Pre, so this is, I think, a JMP kind of rack as well. That's another Marshall based thing. JS410, I think, is the Joe Satriani amp, which is also Marshall based, right? What else have we got? Plexi 100 1970, 100 watt high, Plexi jumped, Plexi normal, 2204, so that's a JCM 800, right? 50 watt high, high 2, jumped, 50 watt normal, so a bunch more Marshalls there. What else have we got? The Splawn stuff, so I think those are also Marshall based. The Sir Badgers, those are sort of Marshall-y. So just as I say, you know, you've got a whole bunch of choices there. So let's go back to Silver, Brit Silver. So this is the first time I've actually dialed this amp in. So all I did was just take the drive up, and also because it's a Marshall, especially with a single coil, you can afford to turn that master volume up. And it's just super satisfying stuff. And then scene 3, that Friedman. you know, you've got so much in terms of choice there that I think, especially if you were in like a gigging band where you're doing kind of tribute stuff and this kind of rocky tribute stuff, or if you're a person who's recording this sort of stuff in the studio, the Fractal world I think is where you might be best off, because obviously the Kemper, you've got a whole bunch of Marshall stuff, but generally you're going to be paying per pack for that. And then also in the Helix there's sort of not as many Marshall options as this, and some of them are based on kind of transitional amps and that sort of stuff. I think in the Boss world there's not much Marshall choice either, because they've kind of gone away from being based on real world amps. And then in the Neural world there's only a few Marshall choices there. There's nothing really where you get anywhere near the amount of choice for Marshalls as you do in the Fractal world. So that's what I think you should be looking at if you're particularly into this kind of 80s or Marshall-y based stuff. There's really nowhere that gets close, in my opinion, to this kind of thing. Let me know your opinions in the comments. Let me know if this was one of your kind of key deciding factors for buying Fractal. Let me know what your favourite Marshall in the Fractal world is as well. This Brit Silver is a new one for me today. And again, I think that JS410, that is Joe Satriani's thing, isn't it? So again, I'll be checking that out a bit more, because I've not actually tried that before. But as I've said with a lot of this Fractal stuff, you could spend kind of years with it, as I have, and you'd still be finding new amps pretty much any time you turned it on if you were so inclined. You know, there's a lot of fun to be had in there. It's quite gratifying without too much work. So let me know if you want me to drop this into the folder, if you want to get your 80s on. I thought that was quite fun. That Silver Jubilee has a bit of a different feel to some of the other Marshalls. I really enjoy that as an amp, so maybe give that one a try. Let me know if you want me to drop it into the folder. There's a Buy Me a Coffee link where you can get all of my Fractal presets. This should work on the FM9 or the Axe FX3 as well. I'll catch you in another video soon. Cheers!